Hello friends. Today I'm going to discuss about why Krishnamurti forces you to take a new approach to horoscope reading. When you are doing a full birth horoscope reading for any of your clients, and if you're following a Krishnamurti Paddhati, then the KP astrology makes a very dramatic departure from the other old method of writing a horoscope reading. So first we have to look at the old method. Only when we look at the old method, then by comparison we would be able to understand that why KP makes a shift from the old method and why it forces you to do a horoscope reading in a very new context. Now, in the old method, which is still followed by many computer generated programs, where you will find 100 page or more than 100 pages of horoscope reading with all the calculations. And but even before that, there used to be something called a scroll, the Kundli scroll, and where the Jyotish or the astrologer would have this kind of a scroll to write the entire lifespan reading for a particular client. Now this is not in much fashion these days, but I remember those days when this was very popular, and this was one of the typical things that you had in your home as the life reading for a particular person, the usually called as the Kundali. And these days, of course, it has been taken over by the computer generated output. But whether it is a computer generated output or it is a scroll, the pretty much the old method followed this particular scheme. And what was the scheme? That first they would look at the planets in various houses, obviously in your chart, and then they would look at the various yogas that were formed in a particular horoscope, and then they would offer some kind of a prediction on the Mahadasha timeline. This was a typical method which was used during the scroll period when the scroll Kundali was popular, and even today, when the computer generated outputs are more in the fashion. And but before I show you the how this old method, or even the computer generated horoscope, they tend to analyze an horoscope, you have to first form a question that when you are looking at a computer generated output or a Kundalini scroll, what do you expect from your horoscope reading? What kind of questions you have in mind? And so while thinking about it, I thought that usually, a person would like to have a list of the eventful years in his or her life, and the usual queries. The usual queries are about education, higher education, research, scholarship, job, promotion, transfer, suspension, marriage and the matrimonial life, children, finances, real estate, health, and there could be many others. And this is just a representative list that I put over here just to show you that these are some of the questions a person has in his or her mind. And usually a person would like to have an astrologer identify the years when something eventful is going to happen. Uh, this is the usual output that your client might expect from you as a part of the horoscope reading. But if you look at the the typical traditional old method, what they do is first they start with planets in various houses. And keep this in mind that you have a question where you have this expectation from the astrologer about identifying the eventful years. Not every year is going to be very eventful in your life, whatever the eventful years are, and in terms of the usual queries, the job, marriage, and health, and those kind of issues. So here is something that I pulled out from the the way the old predictions or the old methods are used. And I would not make any pretensions. Once upon a time, even I was, following this particular format, and today, of course, I feel, embarrassed about it. So when we say the planets in various houses, then this is one typical example. The result of Saturn in sixth house of a chart. Okay. Now, what this says, that strong Saturn in this house destroys enemies through his calm and disciplined attitude. Saturn here also ensures longevity. Strong Saturn in sixth house also creates opportunity to visit foreign lands. When I'm reading, some of these the analysis from the old house, from the old the method, you have to keep in this thing in mind, that what do you expect from a reading, and I assume that you expect somebody to identify the eventful years and around the usual queries. And native with a strong Saturn in sixth house get the support of his younger brothers and sisters. And then some of the enthusiasts about the old way of predicting, they would even, put a note: Lal Kitab remedy for Saturn in sixth house. Keep a black dog as a pet. Feed milk to a snake. Okay. Now, if you look at a emoji, you might be thinking that this is my reaction. This is not my reaction to this prediction, this analysis. This is my reaction to the people who find this thing as very interesting. So this is my reaction. And let's look at another typical way how the old method makes a horoscope reading. Now this is about longevity, accident, and insurance. Obviously, they are talking about the eighth house. So at the time of your birth, Virgo sign was placed in the eighth house. So computer is smart enough to understand that this the eighth house is ruled by Virgo. Now, when you get married, your in-laws may surprise you by giving a lot of dowry. This dowry will include money, jewel, clothes, vehicles. Okay, so you're very happy when you read about this kind of analysis. This makes no sense, but still you have that feel good feeling when you read this thing. And then since this is making an analysis of the eighth house, so your chart does not indicate robbery, although the usual thefts will be there, but still do take the usual precaution. So immediately, you get in a what I called as kabhi khushi and kabhi gum, kind of a mood swing. Now next is the assessment of the yoga. This I have taken from an actual sample horoscope where it says Chakravarti Raj Yoga, and there is a Sanskrit shlok that has been quoted. It makes sense because when you quote a shlok, it gives a lot of credibility and puts a lot of weight as if this is going to happen in your life. And this I have extracted from a PDF printout of somebody whom I know from very close quarters. So Chakravarti Raj Yoga, which is present in that person's horoscope according to this analysis, and it says that the yoga is being formed in your horoscope in its totality. As a result, you will be the head of a nation, state, and will be renowned. You will be honored in native and foreign lands. Immediately below that, there is another yoga that's called the Shakat yoga, and the explanation is given the how this yoga is formed. And now what this yoga says, the yoga is present in your horoscope in its totality. As a result, you may remain grief stricken and your life may remain full of sorrow. So your reaction is something like this. You really don't know whether you are going to be the head of a nation or you are going to be grief stricken. Then finally, and then of course in between the old now especially the computer generated horoscope, they throw in this kind of a table, and where they will put strength of planets in the horoscope or strength of planets in the dasha period. What exactly this means? Suppose let's say you have a government job and you're going through a crisis, and where you might get some kind of a suspension notice for whatever purpose, and you are going through, let's assume, the sun period. Okay, so what this has to do? It says 67% fame, career, success. You know, the burning question on your mind is that, will I get some kind of a suspension notice in my job? And the typical old analysis, is like sun 67%. Or if you look at this chart, this even tends to break down the strength of planets in the dasha period. Okay, so in the period of sun, the sun gets 96%, moon gets 59%. Let's look at any example. Let's say during the period of sun, Venus gets a strength of 32%. Now the problem is that how do you interpret this? If a person is going through, let's say, sun dasha, Venus bhukti, and according to this, the allocation of the strength is 32 units, whatever that means. But it might be, in the real life, it might be good from the, let's say, the job point of view. You might get a promotion, but from the matrimonial point of view, there might be some kind of a tension in your family life. And from the disease point of view, either you could be a bedridden or you might be recovering, from some disease. So what this 32% means, is so vague, right? So you can't make out anything except just feel good about these points, which actually makes no sense in terms of offering any concrete, predictions. Then the third point, we talked about, the planets in the horoscope, and then the yogas, and the third is the typical, the Mahadasha and the sub period, analysis. If you read, these analysis, and if you have this kind of a printout for your own birth horoscope, and you go through all these various sub periods and periods, the dasha, bhukti, and antar analysis, whether it is done by a pandit, manually, whether it is done by a manual process, or whether it is done by a computer. I am more inclined towards computer for various reasons. But eventually, you will not find any value from this old method. Okay, you will find all kind of contradiction happening. You will not see any indication of or pinpointing of the eventful years in your life, and the usual questions, the usual queries that you have about your life, marriage, job, the real estate, and health, disease, those kind of stuff. Okay, so you eventually, at some point, you will graduate, you will mature, and you will feel like, pulling your heads off. And so this is where, when you start getting into the Krishnamurti Paddhati, then you realize that if you have to do a horoscope reading in from the Krishnamurti's point of view, that is very difficult. Then this kind of analysis will not work. You will have to take a very different, approach, and that's why, I said that the KP tends to offer a very new approach in terms of a horoscope reading. I'll give you one example where Professor Krishnamurti himself has made an analysis of some high-ranking government officers for the Rahu Dasha from the career point of view. This is just from the career point of view. And see what he writes. Rahu Dasha, Shani Bhukti, Shukra Antara, November 1965, promotion. Rahu Dasha, Buddha Bhukti, Moon Antara, June 1968, overseas. Rahu Dasha, Buddha Bhukti, Rahu Antara, October 1968, promotion. So all the eventful years, that was our basic, I would say, expectation from any astrologer, to identify the eventful years. So here you see how Professor Krishnamurti has identified all the eventful years, and he has actually gone into the very month of for a particular event from the career point of view to unfold. during the Rahu Dasha. And so that is what is meaningful for you. And now these kind of predictions, you don't need maybe 100 200 pages. These kind of predictions can very easily fit into uh, a postcard. I don't know if postcards are still popular in India or not, but the point is that in just one sheet of paper, you can write these kind of predictions. So that is where Krishnamurti's approach, or the Krishnamurti Paddhati's approach, is very different from the old traditional method. You can't possibly follow old traditional method in writing or in offering a horoscope reading for your client. You have to make a dramatic shift. And what is that dramatic shift? That dramatic shift is that what are the eventful years in a person's life. Let a person lives for whatever 80 years, 100 years. Not every year is going to be eventful, and only some of those years are going to be eventful. And those some of those eventful years are going to be important from usually these questions: education, higher education, research, scholarship, and when a person gets into a job, promotion, transfer, suspension. These are the usual stuff. So when you are preparing a full horoscope analysis, and it might be just a 3 page, 4 page long, and but it's far more valuable, and it's going to consume a lot of your time compared to the old traditional generic kind of output, a meaningless output that has no meaning. And so I thought that I'll just finally I'll just share that how you might want to approach, starting with your own horoscope, since you know a lot of events in your horoscope, how they have unfolded in the Mahadasha timeline, or some of your relatives, some of your family members. So first you have to ensure that I'm going to follow a new Krishnamurti method of identifying the eventful years around the usual queries. You might have more, which is fine. And this is what usually a person expects from you. And when you are doing this, and if you already know how to use KP star 1, then this particular layout of the significators will not be very helpful. Then you have to look into the how all these houses, what kind of planets they represent the ascendant, or what kind of planets they are the significator for the second house, the third house. So you have to create in KP star 1 there is an option, and to create this kind of a table which gives you the significator for all the 12 houses. This is what you will need. And then when you are giving a prediction, which might be just 2 3 or 4 pages, then I would suggest and like I mentioned, starting with your own horoscope, this is one of the suggested format, that you write that from this date to this date, and what is the dasha, bhukti and antara. This is the dasha, bhukti, antara. What is the event that's going to happen? Marriage is going to happen. Okay, similarly, so that way your client, or the person for whom you are preparing a full horoscope reading, you are able to identify all these, the important period, that after 2005, only after 3 years there is something important in your life. I know you will run into people who are very desperate. They want an analysis on a daily basis or a monthly basis. In that case, you can go for an annual, horoscope from the Krishnamurti point of view, which I will discuss the virtual, the Krishnamurti's virtual. And but this is the usual, method that I would recommend. And obviously, in the beginning, you would not be able to go up to, I would say, the antara level. So even the bhakti level is fine. If you are able to identify the major events of life, and at the same time you are able to correlate those major events with the dasha bhukti, this is not a mean or small accomplishment. This is a major accomplishment in the Krishnamurti Paddhati. And additionally, sometimes you have the Krishnamurti Paddhati is more about taking care of what I would say multiple events, happening at the same time. It can happen. And for example, somebody gets married and at the same time, they go and visit a foreign country. They might be going for a honeymoon. It's possible, right? And so rather than the sequential approach, Krishnamurti Paddhati gives you the tool and the method to have these multiple events that might have happened on the Dasha timeline at the same time. But your approach should be what? Your approach should be that if you identify the let's say the marriage period by using the 2, 7 and 11, and then independent of this, you are also assessing that when this person can go to a foreign country, and it so happens that these both of these periods or the dates or the bhukti period tend to be the same, then in your in your the printout or in your output of this event foliage, then you can also write marriage, and then you can say the foreign visit, because you know that the 2 7 11 and the 3 9 12, both of these significated, they tend to correlate with each other. So it could be this could be possible that this person might have a marriage and immediately after that they might go to visit some foreign country for honeymoon. Not necessarily for honeymoon, I mean, I'm just giving you an example. So this is how then you can create some more meaningful output or the horoscope birth reading for a client. This is not a small effort, it's a long effort. That's why I mentioned that you should first start with your horoscope or with the horoscope of your relative or your family members, and because you will need a lot of events date that you could correlate, and many things will go wrong, but that's fine. This is how you learn. So that's all in this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it.